From Navy Pier in Chicago to the Superman statue in Metropolis and everything in between, we'll be hearing the stories from the troopers in their own words. The who, why, and what led them to the Illinois State Police and what they've experienced since then. Without further ado, this is Peak Beneath the Peak.
Hi everybody, I'm Joey Watson. I serve as a sergeant with the Illinois State Police Public Information Office. This is really neat. So today we're talking about missing persons. With the Gabby Petito case, there's been a lot of interest lately between the public and how the Illinois State Police works these cases and how they solve them and what input we have into those the resolution of those cases. And so joining us today is Major Calvin Brown. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Calvin?
Yeah, my name is Calvin Brown. I'm a major with Illinois State Police. Currently, my area of responsibility is the central part of the state. If you were to think from just south of Kankakee, Illinois, to really just north of Litchfield, is the area that I cover. When I say I cover, it's not really me. I have other competent captains and other people who run investigative zones in those areas that handle investigations. Within the state police, as people very well know, we're a state agency and we have statewide police powers, but there's multiple divisions within the state police, but there's really two sides for most people to think about. We have our patrol division, which most people see. It's the marked cars,
right?
And you see the troopers out in their nice Montana Peaks and stuff like that. And then we have our investigative side, which is what we call special agents, but what many people know as detectives. There are 8 special agent or detective areas throughout the state. We call them zones, and what that means is that they cover a multitude of counties within one specific geographic area. So from one county
7 to 10-ish.
Yeah, we can go from like Zone 1, which is the north eastern part of the state, which covers mostly Cook County, Chicago area, since that's a large population base. There's a very they may cover 1-2 counties, whereas we go to the southern part of the state, or in my area, the central western part of the state, where they can cover as many as 21 counties.
Gotcha.
So, I like to say the state police, we're just a big local police agency. So anything that you would go to the normal local police agency or county sheriff's department, whether it be from serious burglaries or property crimes, is generally where we start at, up to and to include homicides and the most serious crimes that there are. But we can investigate everything, but we generally stick to serious crimes and those cases where we're calling to assist local or other agencies.
Now, you're actually, in your former life, you were involved with STIC. So tell us about STIC and what all that entails.
Yeah, I've been fortunate with the state police. I've worked a variety of assignments. The majority of my career with the state police has been in investigative or investigative support functions, and one of those really within the state police is the Statewide Terrorism Intelligence Center.
STIC.
STIC, which commonly known as STIC. It's a fusion center. It's one of, I don't want to state the number, but just about every state in the United States has at least one fusion center. Some have multiple fusion centers, and I'll let maybe our next guest, when you get to Craig, kind of explain what fusion centers are. That's where he works every day. But it's more of a centralized hub for information for law enforcement. We also do some information for our private sector partners, people out in the public, major corporations and things that can contribute to public safety. It's just one big collaborative location for public safety is the way I'd look at it for the general public.
Gotcha.
But, yeah, I spent some time there. I was there for a couple years where I was the assistant center chief, so like the number 2 at the center, as well as I've had some field assignments where I worked with units out in the field that directly reported back to STIC and had a direct impact on some of the information that was came into the center and then ultimately went back out to law enforcement.
Perfect. And so that segs right into Craig's role here. So we have with us also joining Craig Burge. And tell us a little bit about your function and your titles and what your job duties are.
So I'm based here at STIC, the Statewide Terrorism Intelligence Center, like Calvin mentioned. My title is the Clearinghouse Manager, Statewide Clearinghouse Manager and Amber Alert Coordinator for the State Police. What's unique about my position is that it is a position that is all 50 states have this type of position, and what it does is it tries to oversee the missing persons programs throughout the whole state. It provides assistance to local law enforcement when they're researching a missing persons case. It provides them with the ability to contact one centralized location if their missing person case crosses geographical boundaries or borders. Instead of trying to cold call and reach out to various different agencies to try to get information, they can call myself, and I can reach my counterparts in the other states, in the other territories, in the other communities to help them in their missing persons
And
investigation.
so the real benefit to this is the sharing of information. Do I understand that correctly? It's the ability to swap information across geographic boundaries and blur those boundaries out, so that it makes the investigation easier to proceed. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, and it helps that I'm here at STIC because I have analysts that can run all the information that's needed that maybe a local law enforcement can't find addresses. They can't find information on where missing persons may be. And I have those tools here that I can pass along to them. And maybe I come up with something that they've never seen before, or maybe a relative in another state that they never thought of or have had come up in their investigation. We can get all of that information for them. Pass that back out to that local law enforcement agency or officer that's dealing with that case, and provide them at least a new tip or a new way to go.
When you're talking about a child, a minor, adolescent, is that when I think about, there's no reason for a child to be missing. There's no way. I think, I'm a parent, and I don't think there's a time when I don't know where my child is. They should be with someone that I know or trust, or they're at a place that I know they were. So when a child missing, isn't where they're supposed to be, that heightens it a little bit. Whereas an adult, we're not that everyone has a right to freedom to free transit and passage throughout this great country we live in. So that's a little different. So when we get the calls in, it depends on who is missing, as to not how seriously we take it, but as kind of the mechanisms that start to get moving, depending on the actual person, the subject of the missing. So for us looking at the state police, a lot of times if we were to receive a call or get information about a missing person or a missing individual, it's going to come in through our districts. Like I mentioned, we have the 8 investigative zones, but we also have 22 districts throughout the state, which I mentioned is the forward-facing portion of the state police that you see, our squad cars, our troopers. Mostly those calls come into there through a typical dispatch, whether it's a 911 call, or it could be a transfer from another agency, or if we're states, so we may have bordering states, and maybe this is someone that takes a call in another state and they think their loved one is missing from Illinois, so they've been transferred to us. But generally that starts with a dispatch. They'll go to our patrol people, and then a lot of times they'll start to look into it and they'll do an assessment of it, say, okay, well, what exactly do we have? Is it a missing child? Is it a missing adult? So they want to know if it's a child or an adult, and then that can kind of cater how we respond to it. And then what we want to know is, any information we may be able to use to identify that person, to help locate that person, also as well as where they were last seen, because that makes a difference for us. Even though we're the state police and people want to think that we're higher agents than everybody else, we work with all our other law enforcement partners. So many times the call may come to us, but the actual agency of jurisdiction may be where that actual person is from, where they were last seen. And part of the overall process is us getting that information to the right agency that can actually conduct the investigation. We may not conduct the investigation ultimately. We may assist them in and provide all the assistance we need, but we have to make sure that wherever they were last seen, that they are contacted, because they may have more information about the situation than we do because of where they're located, and B, they may have a greater understanding of the individual or the actual circumstances surrounding that we may not know. So we'll make sure we get that whole picture when they start to assess it. So the district or zones will make that assessment, and then after they made the assessment and say, okay, this is something that we need to look farther into, and it's beyond the capabilities of, say, a patrol officer or that portion of the state police, they'll send it to the investigate unit, and we'll take further steps. Again, in an adult, it goes into that point really traditional investigation of, okay, who, what, when, where, and how of what's going on. With a child, it's a little different, and there's some specific incidents that Craig can probably touch on with that they're going to cross over into adults as far as putting broadcasts and things like that out. But the biggest is, like I said, an adult, they have free passage to go where they want to. Right. So sometimes we have to look into that and say, okay, is this a person really missing? I have never seen or been told that they have to be missing for a certain amount of time. I mean, there's in every instance, you have to do that assessment of what's being told to you and why the reporting party thinks that the person they're looking for is missing or in danger, because all of that heightens it. It may be as simple as from my experience, we've had situations where you have someone transit from one state to another, and it's like, hey, my father left, and he's supposed to be here in this many hours. We know it takes this long to drive from his house in Illinois to, our house in Tennessee, and he's not here. He's done this. He's taken this trip 100 times, and part of that conversation and assessment is that, okay, what route does he take? Does he have any medical conditions or any things? And they say, well, he's had, recently he's been diagnosed with this or that. And it's like, okay, well, that can make a difference. That type of thing will heighten the response. Okay, we need to start reaching out to people along the route, looking at technologies that we can use, those types of things. So
it also helps you understand what resources you need.
Exactly. And so the long and short is there is no time frame. Each case is individually looked at and should be individually assessed on how we respond to it and how we react. And again, like as Sergeant Watson said, what resources we bring to the table.
Just to piggyback that onto that a little bit about the misconceptions that are out there, it's actually a state statutorily requirement that local law enforcement take a missing persons report when somebody's there, when they're claiming somebody is missing. So they have to take it, and they have to immediately enter it into NCIC, the national system. And the reason that's so important is that I don't know how many times during my career that a law enforcement officer has come across a missing person, thought nothing was wrong, nothing is available in the system that says that there's anything wrong, and then they let them go. And then later, hours, days later, we may get the information that that person was reported missing, but it was never entered. So those cases could have been remedied much earlier had the local law enforcement or any law enforcement have gone in and made sure that they entered that person in as missing. Time is of the essence when it comes to missing persons, so we want to make sure we take the report as fast as we can, we get it entered as fast as we can, and then we can use all those resources that Major Brown talked about to help local law enforcement.
You bring up a really interesting point too, and a common misconception that we get in the Public Information Office is, okay, so you're the state police, tell this other department what to do. No, we're not their boss, right? Each individual department has its own rank structure and its own chain of command, and so things like that occasionally do happen. I really like that point that time is of the essence. The faster we can get our resources and people boots on the ground, motivated and moving towards the resolution of this case.
A major part of our clearinghouse is the training of law enforcement as well as the public to deal with these cases, because the problem is, especially with a missing child case, is that somebody says their kid's missing. Well, the first thing you want to do is look for them. So you're out looking for hours and hours and hours before you call anybody else in. Well, then by the time we arrive, our area of search has just expanded exponentially because you waited 2 or 3 or 4 hours to let law enforcement know, to let the state police know, so that we can come in and help. So we train law enforcement to get there immediately, to take the reports immediately, to try to access resources immediately. But we also try to tell the parents or the loved ones or the guardians that maybe their elderly mom went missing last week. Well, the greatest predictor of future behavior is past behavior. They're going to do it again. So when that happens, the best thing to do is to contact law enforcement immediately so that we can get our ducks in a row.
From a parental standpoint, I can kind of see a little bit of that. I'm a bad parent, I've lost my kid. And so you go out and try to handle the situation yourself. And I guess I kind of see a little bit of that short, real quick cursory look. But I'm like these guys, there's really needs to be that quick reaction, boots on the ground, get people moving towards the resolution. I like that.
And there's nothing to say you can't look, but if there's multiple people, one person, it's like in a medical emergency. We're all taught and trained. When you do that initial assessment to start CPR, what do you do? First thing they tell you, you go call 911. Same concept. You have another person, go call 911, report this. Or the person that has the most information about the child, maybe they make the report so they can provide the information.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with calling 911, reporting a child missing, and calling them back before it gets saying, we found them. We live on a big farm. They were 3 acres back by the lake. We found them. Everything's good. Thank the Lord. We're good.
Yeah, awesome.
There's nothing wrong with that.
We'll have a party back at the PD and it's over with.
Exactly.
Good deal.
Well, people got to realize that not all missing children qualify for AMBER. We have we have quite a few missing kids. We have very few Ambers. Amber has 4 specific criteria. The first is that there's got to be a law enforcement verified child abduction. So there was actually a crime that has occurred. It's not a child wandering off. It's not a child going missing, no matter their age. It has to do with a specific child abduction. That crime has occurred. The child has to be under the age of 16. The child has to, and maybe most importantly, be in danger of severe bodily harm or death. And then fourth, we have to have enough information about the child, the victim, the suspect, the vehicle, in order for us to release it to the public so that they in turn can provide us information back. It's everybody wants to call every missing child case an Amber Alert. Like I said, very few of them qualify. The local agency or a state police district will contact myself, and I'll go through the criteria with them. I want to make sure that they understand that what has to hit that statutory mandate to activate an Amber Alert. And then I also, if it doesn't qualify, I also want to tell them other things that they could do that they haven't thought of. Maybe investigative resources, maybe other lower alerting systems that we can use to push out that information that maybe don't hit quite the threshold of Amber, but still is providing some information to the public for their feedback that come back to us.
That's a really neat point. So you guys not only provide the ability to flow information in and out, but you also provide resources. I love that.
We do, and even if by getting denied for an Amber by a local law enforcement agency, that doesn't mean we hang up the phone and say, good riddance to that.
Yeah.
We still provide investigative resources if they need it. State airplane, maybe they got a missing kid and they need an airplane. We'll call Air Ops. Investigations. We even have a secondary alerting system called our Endangered Missing Persons Advisory, and it's an advisory that is sent out that still can go on the billboards and still can go on the different areas that doesn't have to meet the threshold of Amber Alert. All it's got to say is that somebody is missing based on some sort of endangerment. And that endangerment could be based on age, could be based on a disability or disorder, could be on a disease, could be weather related. All of those type of things can be an endangerment to that person. And we still have a network of 2,700 broadcast partners that we deal with that all volunteer their airwaves, they volunteer their social media sites, they volunteer their websites so that they can push out the information when we have somebody that goes missing that we believe that is endangered in some way, shape, or form.
Like, what are some other common stumbling blocks as well?
I think what you're getting at is, the investigative tradecraft is what people see. Like you said, the CSI effect.
Yeah.
People see it on TV. Oh, they can just do this, and it's like, well, there's some truth to some of that, but there's not as it's not 100%. Like everything. There's a grain of truth in everything. So, with the cell phone, yes, there is the opportunity for us to trace cell phones and things like that, working through our partners, through the telephone companies and things like that. Could we use things, depending on the case, internet activity, their last active in internet, can we use other technologies, whether it be, cameras on the interstate, whether it's, their financial records, where they're using their debit cards or things like that. All those different types of technologies that you can think of, sometimes in the case, it's investigators sitting around and say, hey, how can we find this person?
Spitballing.
And that's just like, well, I know a person, they have this. You think we can track that? I don't know. Let's call the company and see. But with that, there are rules and laws to everything we do. We can't just track someone's phones. Now, in the case of there being a bona fide Amber or something where we can justify and articulate that there is an exigent threat to life safety, we can contact cell phone providers or internet service providers, and they will immediately do what they can to help us to help find that. As Craig says, not everything's an Amber, and in the majority of cases, it's not that easy, making that articulation. Even though, the family or loved one may think, oh my God, they're in danger, we can't articulate that enough to overcome the privacy hurdles and, of someone, privacy of their technology. So many times we have to go and get court orders. We have to go to a court of law, go to the state attorney and get, a search warrant or a subpoena to be able to provide to a cell phone company so that we can actually look at that information to see, okay, where was the last known location of this phone? Is it still on? we're on those types of things. And that kind of gets back when you brought up that point about people wanting to, and Craig brought up, wanting to go search immediately, of us getting behind the clock. We want to stay as close to that time of incident as we can and working, back from that. If we get behind the clock, then everything we do is old, we're having to catch up. Where if someone reports their loved one missing and they were supposed to be here at a certain time or a certain date, and it's like, well, they're supposed to be here 2 hours ago. Well, when they leave, we know all that stuff. We can, if it comes down to it, in old days, say, okay, well, we know they took this route. Probably we can say, okay, any district in this area, check the gas stations, check these exits, and start that way. Whereas now we could, use technology to do those things, but the closer it is to that missing time, the better, and the more effective those technologies we can use. But it's not as easy as just grabbing, hey, track someone's phone. Sometimes it involves us that will take some time for us to get court orders and things like that.
And that's the thing that I really appreciate that you're pointing out, is there is an amount of time there when you go to talking court orders, you go to talking chasing down through companies and cell phone providers. There's going to be time, and so there's often that sense of family. Why can't you find my loved one immediately? And I completely understand the urgency and how they're feeling, but it's not CSI Miami.
Yeah.
It can't be done just like that.
And that would kind of what Craig was saying, and he probably backed it up more, is that network of people and things like that. Even though we may, and that was one of my jobs when I was here as assistant interim chief. A lot of times I was a person that, if Craig said nope, it doesn't meet it, call him back and said no, it doesn't meet it. This is why. But here are the things we can do. We can provide them help with writing those. If it's a local agency that's never done this, writing those search warrants and subpoenas, and providing them information, contacting the right people. So all of that. Things that take time, if they didn't have this network or people like Craig to provide those resources, it would take even longer.
Yes.
So there's always stuff going on in the background.
And even if it doesn't qualify, and it takes a while for subpoenas and all that kind of stuff, we can do things through the media and through our partners that are all voluntary that we can push out information to. We have connections that we utilize with the Illinois Lottery. So in a lottery terminal, when you go into the gas station, you see that digital board across. We take over that when we got an endangered missing, and we put the person's picture, if they're driving a vehicle, we put their vehicle information. Everyone that has a lottery terminal that has a digital display, we're in that, and that is all
cool.
Voluntary partnership with lottery. It costs us nothing. Lottery gives up their space because they're making money off of the revenue from people that want to advertise with them, and we actually take that over and put that up. Like you mentioned, the Department of Transportation, we take over their interstate digital dynamic boards and we put that information up there. The Outdoor Advertisers Association, there's a lot of digital billboards that are now on our interstates that we take over. Illinois tollways, all of those type of technologies are all free to us. About running the clearinghouse is making those contacts. So as Major Brown will notice, sometimes when I'm not here at STIC, I'm out talking to these people and shaking hands with these people and trying to say, oh, you've got this technology. You're the Illinois Retail Merchants Association. You can reach out to all of these merchants and provide them that information. Great. Let's shake your hand. Let's see what we can do to provide more information to the public without diminishing the criminal aspect of things, but using the public as our resource to get information back. The more eyes we can get on a case, the more eyes that we can get out searching, the better off that we're going to be. The problem comes in when everybody thinks that everything that's posted on the internet is true. And all of these Facebook messages and all of these things that come about are true. And we've got to realize that, they could provide law enforcement with a great with great tips and maybe moving them in a great direction. But as a society, we cannot think that everything that they say is going to be gospel and is exactly how the case should be, should be investigated or should
Imagine
be
it
followed
brings
through.
in a lot of leads that maybe aren't
Yeah.
credible.
I'll piggyback on Craig. I think that's kind of the burden of that. It is a great tool, social media crowdsourcing, which, as you put, is correct. The correct term. Crowdsourcing, open source. Information about a specific incident or a missing person. In this case, it's a lot of information that comes in. Just like you have to have a way to filter that information and to be able to follow up on the leads, the information, which can involve more time or more resources. It doesn't mean that it can speed up and slow down an investigation at the same time. You have to have a method for working through those leads, and I think that's a lot of times where not a failure, but that's where the confluence of too much information and not enough people and not a way to filter it out comes, and that can slow down things and say, okay, which one do we follow up? There's so many of them, and it's like, well, we got to follow them all up. Then you have to try and figure out a way to prioritize those
Triage.
leads.
Yeah.
So you're triaging, prioritizing. Okay, this lead came in and said it's, the person was wearing, I don't know, a dinosaur costume and they had a tinfoil hat on. It's like, okay, that's in tier 3. We're not gonna immediately jump on that one. Whereas the other one's like, okay, this is the car we're looking for. Same time, same geographic area. Let's go talk to this person. So it's just a matter of weeding out the ones that seem more credible or seem more viable. I would use the word viable instead of credible because they can all be credible. The thing that we think is the most oddball, spitball thing might be the thing that breaks the case for us. But you're trying to look at the initial viability and triage all that information.
So that was part 1 of our missing persons interview with Division of Criminal Investigations Major Calvin Brown and Statewide Clearinghouse Manager and Amber Alert Coordinator Craig Burge. Make sure you tune back in to catch part 2 right here on Peak Beneath the Peak.